And when you're in those moments, you want to be there forever, right? You're just like, this is what I'm made for. This is what my purpose is. This is where I'm supposed to be going. He is the founder of Kairos Coaching and author of the Kairos Code.
Kairos is the divine time when God acts. You're totally unaware of the clock. You were so immersed, so present.
We can reach those things, and they're not as far away as we believe them to be.
Getting into this industry, I've now seen so many shysters out there, bad actors. I was underneath the umbrella of a Fortune 100 company. I get called one morning from corporate executive vice president, and my world as I knew it was over. What I thought was stripped away from me was everything. But what wasn't was my family. You're leaving a legacy every single day you have breath in your lungs and you're walking on this earth. So here's the simple solution. Keep your word to yourself.
I want everyone to feel like because they knew me that they were better off and that their life was better having known me.
On the back of his tombstone, his brother just wrote a short quote, and that's what's on there is he made a difference.
Hello and welcome to the Built to Lead podcast, where I, Jory Evans, am going to bring great guests for you and try and share tactical business advice and leadership stuff. So I've got a wicked guest for you guys today. I'm super excited to introduce my friend Josh Kosnick to you. He is becoming a great friend. He's a husband. He's a father. He's built 3 different businesses and exited out of that. He is the founder of Kairos Coaching and author of the Kairos Code, EOS implementer, and overall just super ripped and awesome dude. So welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jory. I love the ripped part. I'll just share a fun story I was sharing with my mastermind last week. I think the biggest flex or biggest compliment I've received has come lately, anyhow, has come from 7 and 8-year-olds in my son's class because they refer to me as the Jack Dad. And I was like, that's right. From 7 and 8-year-olds, they know that, hey, Cam's dad can kick their dad's ass.
Yeah. Oh, it's a funny thing, like having teenagers, and I think you have teenagers as well. Being that dad is, I always kind of try to keep this a little bit of a mysterious, um, per, dark persona with all the other teenagers, especially having teenage daughters. And I'm working on being realized as the Jack Dad. I don't think I've quite got that reputation yet, but yeah, it's definitely helpful to be fit and to be looking as a bit of a threat to all those teenage boys out there.
That's right.
Perfect. Well, I want to talk to you today, Josh. I just finished reading your new book, The Kairos Code, and it was a really, really great book, and I super related with it and appreciated it. And your journey that you share in that book is just it's just really genuine, like I was saying to you earlier, and I appreciate. As a guy who's an entrepreneur, been in business, a father, a husband, trying to be the best I can be, just walking through that with you and getting to experience your experience and having that speak a ton of like really good, wise thoughts and even mental systems through it as well. So I'm going to dig into that a bit and ask you some questions. So first of all, what does Kairos mean?
That's a great question. So the only people that I know that are familiar with the word Kairos came from one of the sects of the Lutheran Church, and I don't remember which one, and they went to a Kairos camp when they were a teenager. So unless you're one of those people or understand the Greek language, you probably have never heard the word before. But to break it down, it's an ancient Greek word. And the other word that you would know is chronos. And we live on chronos time. That's your hour by hour, minute by minute clock time. Kairos is, in the ancient Greek definition, a moment or era. And there's actually a biblical definition to it as well, where it's the divine time when God acts. And so when I formed my coaching company, it was the summer or coming out of the COVID era that we all had to live through. And, we're attached to our computer screens. We're not outside as much. We're trapped in our homes. And I was introduced to the word Kairos and the meaning behind it. And I'm like, Oh man, I can get behind that. Like it's now the moment, the era for us to break away from these screens, to get back into our communities, to break free, to get out into nature, to actually live the life that we were meant to live as humans. And so that's what I founded. That's when I founded Kairos Coaching, and then spawned the Kairos Code and how to live that life. And I want to give one other definition to it. I think this is the one that most people can resonate. If you've ever been in flow or in zone, whether it be a sport or computer hacking or whatever coding that you may do, like if you've ever been in flow or in the zone, the new age terminology, that's what I'm talking about. That's Kairos. You're totally unaware of the clock. You were so immersed, so present. That's Kairos time. And the only person that we know that lives on Kairos time is God.
Hmm.
He's omnipresent, he's transcendent. We don't have that opportunity to not live by a clock. That being said, we can catch glimpses of Kairos and be utterly present, utterly immersed, and being utterly where our feet are. That I want to help people catch more glimpses of that Kairos time.
Yeah, I like that. The moment when God acts, and I can super resonate with that too. Like in being in business and all the years that I've done things, I often kind of grapple with that idea of, am I doing what God would have me doing? Am I walking in the steps that He has for me, or am I just running on my own strength and doing my own thing, right? And those moments of flow when you're kind of in them and when they're happening, when you've been praying toward or into something, and you're really actually submitting to what God wants for you or what the plan is there, and then you hit that flow like you're so talking about, and there's this moment when things just seem to be going all together, and that doesn't even mean it's going well. It's that you just have a bit of an overwhelming peace and knowing
Mm,
that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing right now, and it's speaking to you in your spirit, but also just in how you feel about it too, right? And
that's right.
and when you're in those moments, you want to be there forever, right? You're just like, this is what I'm made for. This is what my purpose is. This is where I'm supposed to be going. And you can really lean into it. And it really is great. Whereas I found one of my biggest struggles, and I've talked about this on the podcast a lot, is always that whole mentality of going back to working on my own strength, right? And from a biblical standpoint, it says don't do that all over the place in Proverbs. Like you're clearly not strong enough, but we always think we are. We're Jack Dad, right? And so we got the world on our shoulders, and that's fine. Throw in another backpack. I'm going. I can run through walls. But the reality is when you really get into it, you realize your inadequacy and how much you really need God to be the one that's laying out your steps. You want to be on the path that He's projecting for you, not the one that you think you should be on.
That's right. And that's one of the hardest things to realize, especially if you're a type A controller like you and I. We like to control things. And
Oh yeah.
what I've uncovered throughout my life is there's only three businesses. There's your business, there's others' business, and there's God's business. Well, we only have control over one, and I would say that it's very loose control, and that's our own business. But too often we're trying to be in others' business or in God's business and trying to control things we have zero control over.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And as humans, we always just think that we are really in control of anything, when in reality we have so little control of everything. One small change in someone else's driving in the morning, and we're done. Like we just have
Yeah.
no control of anything, right? One thing that I really liked in your book, I prescribe of a bit of a methodology. We use Core Four in our businesses, which is kind of like four quadrants of life, which in that case is your physical health, your mental and spiritual health, your relationship health. So that's family, friends, and whatnot, and then your financial and productivity health. Right. And so we break it down that way, but you've broken it down differently, and you call it the five bridges. So can you kind of break down what the five bridges methodology is, and how you use that in your in Kairos code and coaching?
Yeah. So the five bridges came from a deep spot of hurt, but really what it came from as well is I used to fill out Darren Hardy's Wheel of Life. And for anyone that knows Darren Hardy as an author, or he used to be the chief editor at Success Magazine, I did some coaching with him probably in 2010. And this Wheel of Life had eight spokes on it. And it was like, spiritual, financial, professional, uh, family relationships, other relationships, so on and so forth. And you'd fill out this questionnaire, and then you'd put a dot on the chart, 1 to 10, and then you'd see if your wheel was balanced or if it was lopsided. And it
Mm.
was a really good tool to see what areas I needed to fix or work on at the very least. That being said, as I went through some hardship and screwed up some of my priorities, I realized that, hey, not every one of those should be even based on our priorities and what we hold to be true. And there should be an order to them, not just a circular wheel. And so that's where I came up with the 5 bridges. Like, if I'm not right with God, nothing else is right. Like, nothing else is
Yeah.
right. And so spiritual bridge has to be number one. And then I went to, okay, so if I get that right, what comes next? All right. So I named it the internal bridge, but really it's your mental, your emotional, and your physical health. Because if I'm not my best version, I can't be the very best for Jory and this audience on this podcast. I can't be the best for my spouse. I can't be the best for my kids. I can't be the best for my employees. So I have to take care of me. It's not a selfish endeavor. It's a selfless endeavor. Yes, you can take it too far, but let's just talk to the normal person that's trying to get this right. Every time we board an aircraft, the flight attendant tells us to put on our oxygen mask before assisting others in case of emergency. The reason they tell us that is because we're no use to anyone else if we're passed out or dead. So, very similar to your everyday life, you have to be mentally, emotionally, and physically strong so that you can be the best for others. So, that's bridge number 2. Then we get to, all right, when everything was stripped away from me, and we'll get into that story in a bit, I'm sure, but what I thought was stripped away from me was everything. But what wasn't was my family. They were still by my side. And so if I fast forward and go, okay, to my deathbed, I sure want my family by my bedside on my deathbed. My employees, friends, they likely won't be. So, what are the things that matter most in our life? It's the relationships, they're the fruit of life. And how do we nurture and respect them? Relationships have to come second. So, I still keep the order: God first, yourself second, your spouse, if you have one, then your kids, if you have them. And by the way, that's biblical: spouse first,
Hmm.
kids next, and then everyone else after kids. But too often, us entrepreneurs, us business owners, are pouring everything into our employees at the sacrifice of our families. And
Yeah.
so the order of that bridge is very, very important, and making sure that we don't screw up that order. Once
Well,
we
I
get
think
past,
it's an unpopular thing too. Hey, when you get into conversations with people that have it out of order, it's when I commonly hear is the kids come first, right? You hear that in relationships and people all the time, and you can see the unhealth that comes from that, right? In their spouses, in their other relationships, and in their relationship with God, even. And it's just like you challenge people on it, but they have a really hard time understanding how key that order is to like true health.
right, well, and this is why it's biblical and why God's word is so important in it. It's because if you aren't right with your spouse, your kids witness that, and then they
Yeah.
bear that. And then they replicate that in their relationship with their spouse in the future, right? So that's why it's so important to guard and protect and place your spousal relationship over your kids, because they're going to replicate and emulate exactly what they saw.
Yeah,
So
100%.
that's why it's so important, and why I kept the biblical order in that regard. Um, Bridge 4 is the one we all skip to and like to skip to. I call it environment, but it's really your professional, your financial, your creative, and your material. And I don't want to say it's not all our fault. I think it's society has some to blame in here. And it's conditioned in us since we're little kids to go, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then in high school, we're positioned with, what are you going to go to college for, or university, as they say in Canada. And the and then in college, they go, okay, well, what are you going to do with that degree? And it's always about the what and not the who or the how. And so I think a better question, excuse me, is, who do you want to be when you grow up? And what type of impact do you want to have on the world? Or how do you want to impact the world? I think those are better questions, because we get so wrapped in this what. So then we get a degree, we fall into that workspace, and we're constantly chasing positional power and money and whatever we can to get ahead. And then we sacrifice the first 3 bridges to attain whatever we think is important.
Yeah.
And I want to
Our
caveat
our
here.
identity gets wrapped up in the what we do rather than in the who we are. That another good addition to that thought process that I found is Craig Rochelle. It's a long time ago now they came across this. He did a I can't remember if it's a sermon or just a talk on the difference between do goals and be goals,
Mm.
and what we do and who we want to be and how we should really be positioning be in front of do. And so when we decide who we are and what our identity is and who we want to be, our actions should follow that based on that lead, right? And I think this is totally the same point that you're getting at, right? Is it's not about the what, it's about the who.
Well, there's a stat we use in EOS language a lot because we teach the delegate and elevate tool or the Eisenhower matrix, however people want to look at it. And 95% of the population finds themselves in the bottom left quadrant, which is they're kind of good at, but they really don't like. And that's why you see so many miserable people walking around the face of the earth, is
Yeah.
because they fell into a position where they're kind of good at that work, or they got a degree in that work and they happen to be kind of good at it, but they really don't like it. And what we want to get is that upper left quadrant where we love what we do and we're great at doing that. And it brings us joy in our life. And so that's the environment bridge. And I always want to caveat and tell people, it's like, I want you to win big. No matter how you view my bridge system, I want you to win big in your life. And I want to run a big business and build as big of dreams and visions with it as possible. What I don't want you to do is screw up the priorities. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, hopefully on your tombstone, you don't want an epitaph like, here lies Jory, he ran a $50 million company. No, here lies Jory, he was an amazing father, husband, leader. Like that's more the epitaph that we want to see at the end of
Yeah,
our days.
you're losing sight. That whole exercise of what do you want people to say at your eulogy, or who do you want around you at your deathbed? That is a super helpful exercise to go through with people, because we definitely lose sight. It's kind of that forest for the trees mentality, right? It's like we get
Yep,
so close to what we're working on, what we're doing, and the performance of how we're doing it, and everything, that we forget that that winning isn't a bank account number, right?
that's
And
right.
a lot of people kind of think it is. It's like, well, that's the scoreboard, and it's like, well, it doesn't have to be, actually. Like, you decide what your scoreboard is. And defining for myself, and actually for my team, as I've led a lot of our team members, I had to kind of reframe for myself and for everyone else. Okay, this is what winning is, because you forget that everyone has a different framework for what winning is in their perspective, and you don't understand it until you really dig into it with them. And then if you can help them define what winning is in a healthy and appropriate way, they're going to actually win on a better level, and they're going to be happy with their identity and where they're going and why they're going there, because it'll have purpose tied to it instead of just a metric.
That's 100% right. And if we get those first four bridges right, we get to move to the fifth one, which is legacy. And there's two
Mm,
things people get wrong about legacy often. One is they think it's someday out in the future, 30 years from now. And the other
yeah.
is that they think it's about things or material things, whether it's money, real estate, business, whatever it may be. And so let me challenge both of those thoughts. One is you're leaving a legacy every single day you have breath in your lungs and you're walking on this earth through every action you take or every action you don't take. And every interaction you have with a human being, you're leaving a piece of yourself. So you have that opportunity to leave a legacy every time you get to wake up each day. And the second thing with the things, it's not about the things. Like my father-in-law passed in 2018. I told some of that story in my book, very untimely death through suicide. And I have a couple of his things, and sure, they bring me great memory. But what I have more is what he left in me. So you have the ability to leave. It's more about what you leave in others than what you leave behind.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, one of my like personal, mission statements, or whatever you want to call it, for myself is that I want everyone to feel like, because they knew me, that they were better off and that their life was better having known me. And I think having some of those contexts is a similar sort of thing as a legacy, or building your legacy is if you go out each day with that sort of a mission, you're going, okay, my job is to leave something in someone, or have an impact or an effect on everyone that I talk to or deal with, that is leaving a lasting impression, right?
Yeah, in fact, to that point, Jory, by the way, mine's very similar. Uh, my father-in-law, on the back of his tombstone, his brother just wrote a short quote, and that's what's on there is he made a difference.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was to that point, there was over a 4-hour wait at his visitation. Every person he
Yeah.
did business with flew in to pay their respects because that's how much they admired him and the difference he had on their lives.
Yeah. They were impacted by him, right? And in a
That's
good
right.
way, not in a bad way. It's great. So those are the five bridges we've gone through, and I think they really, and I like your point about ordering them correctly, because I think sometimes even in that core four perspective, I haven't really spent too much time trying to dig into order. What I say about those things is if you leave any one of these things on its own to die, or you drop that ball completely, it's coming for the rest of them, right? And in a lot of ways, I think it's similar with the bridges. Is that if you ignore any one of these things too horribly bad and just discount it for your whole life, it's going to come to take your other things, right? Is like if you let your health break down, it's not going to matter how good you are at business, you're going to fail, right? Like
Yeah.
it's coming for you. If you let your marriages and your relationship with your kids break down, none of the rest of it's going to matter anyway. So that's going to end up crumbling in the long run, and typically does, right?
Yeah, actually, one of my personal missions, since you shared yours, is to help people eliminate regret. And that's really what
Yeah.
you're talking about, right? Is like we get to the end of our road, and I used to be in the financial planning space, and we would study this, the top 5 regrets of the dying. And although they would change each year, they all had a similar theme. It's on things they didn't do versus things they did do. So they regretted not taking the action of chasing their dream, or they regretted the action of not taking that family trip while their kids were still young. It was all things they chose not to do versus things they chose to do. And so whether it's neglecting a relationship and that causes a divorce, where a lot of entrepreneurs end up on their third marriage, or they're married to a bottle of alcohol or whatever it may be because they're looking for a vice to cloud some pain. Like, I want to be the one that steps in and say, hey, there's a better way, and we can get in front of this now.
Yeah. Help people process that wisely too. Like that's another thing. I think just people often aren't as introspective as they could be, and they don't take the time and energy to really dig into the things in their life that they want and the problems that they face. And then tackle them with intentionality instead of just letting life happen to them all the time. And I wanted to get into this eventually too. Is that you're coaching and mentoring, you're doing masterminds and that kind of thing with Kairos coaching. But how have you grown or changed being a coach and being coached in your own life? That really points to a real difference maker of who you are and who anyone else can be by really seeking out good mentoring and good coaching.
Well, so I've had a coach. Well, so I grew up playing football and other sports, and I played football in college. So I've always had a coach in my life. For my professional life, I've had a coach ever since I stepped in the door as being an entrepreneur at 24 years old. And I'll give your audience this as well. Like, if you're ever exploring a coach and a coaching relationship, and they don't have a coach, that should be an immediate red flag, and you should run as fast as possible, because we're
Yeah.
never done arriving. Like, I have 2 to 3 coaches in my life at any given time. I have mentors. Obviously, you and I are mentored by Ed and Andy through Arate. I always
Hmm.
joke with people that say that they're our coaches. I was like, they're not. They're our mentors. Like, our coach is a one-on-one relationship where you're actually directly addressing your issues, and not to a group, right? So, um,
That's a great delineation there to explain, right? Is like the difference between coaching and mentoring is like you could be mentored by an author of a book you're reading,
that's
or
right.
someone that you don't know very directly, but you can't be coached by them unless you have an actual relationship.
Yeah, you could be mentored by Jory and I on this podcast right now, but we're not
Hmm.
coaching to your specific issues or having that one-on-one relationship where we can dive deeper into. So the coaching world is full of uh, a lot of shitheads. I didn't know it, like, because all the coaching that I knew before I got into this world is I knew good ones. I employed good ones for myself, or I hired good ones, I should say. And the only ones I knew, like Ben Newman's been a friend for 20 years. Like, I just saw the good ones. And then getting into this industry, I've now seen so many shysters out there, like just
Yeah.
bad. bad actors that really haven't built anything, haven't been in the business, or haven't built a business, that are just selling coursework and ripping people off. And so now I'm trying to flip that, the whole industry on its head through some of the work that I'm doing. But the right coach makes you so much better. The right
Yeah.
coach that can speak directly to you and challenge you and hold you accountable. Like my coach, when everything fell apart for me, I tried to push him away. I was like, "You're my business coach. I don't have a business right now. Like, what are we going to talk about?" And he goes, "Josh," and it wasn't to keep me as a client. It was like he had plenty of clients in a waiting list out the door. He goes, "Josh, I think you're going to need me now more than ever." And he was so right. But I was trying to push him away. And there's just that one comment put a seed in my head where I was like, all right, well, I'll hear him out. And we met every other week. And he just kept me focused on the next thing that I could control when my whole world felt out of control. He's like, are you working out? Did you call your attorney? Like, these are the next steps you got to take on the things that you can actually control and keep yourself moving forward. So the right coach can change your world so immensely. They can help you not take some missteps that they have previously taken, right? So
Yeah.
you think about the bridge analogy. In some of my keynote talks, I'll put up the like an Indiana Jones bridge, with the ropes and the
Yeah.
wooden planks that some are broken and some are about to break if you step on one. Like the coach is on the other end of that bridge telling you, don't step there. That's a massive pitfall I've fallen into. Here's my story. Here's why you don't want to do that. Oh, step on that one, go that direction. And that's a safe landing space for you to make a great decision. Like that's what a coaching relationship should do, is like propel you exponentially and keep you from falling into your own pitfalls.
Yeah. I That's a super great point. I've found with coaching and that kind of thing too is that sometimes it's surprising when we start to consider ourselves high performing, or we've reached a point where we feel we're uber disciplined, or not that we ever arrive like you said, but you can get this kind of false security that you're quite good at this now, and everyone around me, I'm leading and coaching them, and so I'm the man or whatever. But you really lose sight of the value of someone who's willing, and this is something that weighs heavy on me now too, is when you have enough people under you looking you for leadership, you don't realize that they stop critiquing you, they stop calling you out, they stop holding you accountable, and they stop actually relating with you in a lot of ways and what you're trying to accomplish. And so you can take your foot off the gas, and you can start to even plateau and spiral, but no one's going to say anything to you if you don't have a coach that's really going to call you out on your crap, right? And go
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, you did this particular thing, but did you see the collateral damage that you caused? Do you care about what you did? Did you see that person maybe doesn't respect you the same way they used to, and that thing's eroding now? Or you kind of copped out there. You could have done better than that, right? You need someone that's willing to poke you in the chest when no one else is anymore, right?
Yeah, there's actually this unwritten rule amongst us EOS implementers, and there's about 1,000 of us worldwide, where we call it stepping into the fire. And
Hmm.
it's did we ask a question today, or did we make a comment that could potentially get us fired? And
That's
it's a
good. I
great
like that.
thought process, right? Because we want to, if our job is to propel that leadership team that's at the table, and if we see them either getting complacent, or if we see them going down rabbit holes that don't actually matter, or if we see someone at the table that potentially doesn't even belong, but the team isn't addressing the real issue, like we got to step into that fire and say, hey, I see a red flag here. I see a problem here. And it may piss some people off or ruffle some feathers, but that's our job as the coach to get the best out of them.
Yo, 100%. There's I think it's a EOS concept too, which is like mining for conflict. Um, uh, I use it in how we do EOS anyways, but it's like really trying to pull the threads on those sensitive topics that nobody wants to touch, which is often something the leader needs to do properly in an environment, or especially a coach. A coach needs to grab that little thread and start unraveling it, right? And so go, hey, is that really how you feel, or is that really as good as you can do, or do you really believe that? And just tug on those things, right? and to really make people question themselves. And a lot of the time that's super uncomfortable. And to be a good leader or a good coach to anyone, you have to be willing to enter into that
Yeah,
discomfort with them,
that's
and
right.
go there, because that's what truly caring and loving someone is, right?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. The the analogy, or I'm actually not an analogy, a situation that just came up 2 weeks ago. I have a client that does meat processing, or as you Canadians would say, processing. Uh, be- and uh, the dichotomy is three owners that are, 50, 60, and then three young leaders that are, 25 to 35. And at the
Hmm.
end of the day, I'm sitting there, I leaned into the fire and I said, "Hey, you young guys, I need your voices. Too often at this table, we're letting the, quote unquote, older guys run the show. And you guys are the one on the floor dealing with all the employees. And if we don't get your opinions, it's not going to allow them to make the best decisions." I was like, do we have an
Yeah, right.
understanding that you're going to share your voice as often as possible at this table? And they're like, "Yes, sir." I'm like, "Awesome." But that
Yeah,
was two
it's
weeks
perfect.
ago. I got to wait till my next meeting with them to see if they actually take that advice to heart. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a good thing to teach, like to teach your team that too, or anyone you're leading. We do a little exercise when we do team health checks on like quarterly or annuals, called the one thing exercise. And every person is required to talk to everyone else on the leadership team publicly about one thing they do really, really good they should keep doing, and one thing they do that they should stop doing because either they're not good at it or they don't handle it well or they need to work on it. And it's super uncomfortable for anyone
Yeah,
because they have to actually tell someone something that they're not good at or that they're not doing right or that they need to work on. And we're often just too comfortable hanging out in that comfy, soft, not actually dealing with the real problems and facing the brutal facts, like the good to great concept is we got to face these things head on and actually get real criticism. And I've seen more growth out of my leadership team from that exercise than any other exercise that I've done, because they get some honest critical feedback for a change, right?
yeah,
And it's
I love
so
it.
powerful. So just keeping on rolling here. In your book, you talk about you stepped in and took over your financial firm for your father, and were selected to do that. And then you were as far as everything looked and felt to you, you're killing it and doing really well. And a few unfortunate situations kind of landed you in a hot situation that suddenly got you removed from the position you were in. And so something I saw with that that is super tough for any entrepreneur is the idea of working under or building a business under another person's umbrella, or where you don't really truly have the control. Not that we actually ever have control, but what was your experience going through that, and what would you say to other people who might be in that sort of a situation?
Well, so to put some perspective, yeah, I was underneath the umbrella of a Fortune 100 company, but I, so I always explained to outsiders, I was like, one second, get control of my voice here. We, I was like a hybrid between a regional vice president and a franchise owner. I was like, if I
Hmm.
wasn't doing the job, they could terminate me, but they'd have to buy me out. I never once considered that I could be terminated for doing a really good job. And
Yeah.
so I was 35 years old, the youngest appointed managing partner in the country when I took over for my father. And we were growing and having an amazing time. Like, really, everything was going so well, except we had this one cancer in our culture who happened to be on my leadership team. And I'll say that one of the mistakes that I made, because there's always things that you can do better as leaders, was I kept seeing him as immature. And then my background is I've developed plenty of immature people into maturity and being great advisors, great leaders. What I kept mistaking for immaturity, though, was actual character flaws. And that led to 5 years into my tenure there, him suing me for discrimination because we were at the height of the BLM movement, the height of DEI in corporate space. And he saw his skin color as an advantage to get himself ahead. And so I didn't actually discriminate. Corporate knew I didn't discriminate. In fact, he was appointed the youngest managing partner that was of African American descent in the company's history. And so a managing director that I appointed him to, and it was just a fascinating time because I get called one morning from corporate executive vice president, had me meet him at the Marriott, which is a tenth of a mile away from my office that I had 35,000 square feet. So it was odd. Like, why are we meeting at the Marriott? Feeling really weird about it going into it. But we were due to negotiate some numbers for the next year. So I was kind of conflicted. Like, is this a good meeting, bad meeting, whatever? And as soon as my butt hit the chair, it was bad. And they're like, no easy way to say this. You're no longer managing partner. We're going in a different direction. And then they tried to slide two pieces of paper across the table, get me to sign one. And I had just enough wits about me to say, I'm not signing anything until I speak to my attorney. And I walked out, and my world as I knew it was over. And so, it was interesting in that time frame you asked about my father, like, and not that he wouldn't have chose me, but the company had to choose me. And so I had to work to be undeniable in that firm because there was the potential views of nepotism and all this different stuff that, I just had to become undeniable. And I did, and I earned that. And then all your blood, sweat, and tears goes away in an instant. And it's it's just devastating. Like, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs since then as well that it doesn't matter if it's a happy exit or a terrible exit like mine was. You go through a loss of identity, you go through a loss of purpose, you really go through the five stages of grief, just like you do with losing a loved one. And you have to work through that. And I was deep in the pit of grief at that time.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, like, obviously, like I said, it's been 20 years of building this a business and up into multiple businesses now, but just have that all gone in an instant, and to try and reevaluate when you, by all standards, did everything right, right?
Yeah.
And just sit with that, and then the other part is just feeling like you're really in control, and then being reminded how out of control it all really is, right?
Yeah. And that's why I don't do like I got recruited by everyone in the financial industry in America. And that was a big reason as to why I couldn't go back into the industry is I couldn't put myself or my family in that position again.
Yeah, and I don't want to like push on this too hard, but I really think that for a lot of people, like the franchise model or working for a big corporation or whatever, there's a lot of potential upside to that. You get to use their branding and their naming and their systems, and there's a lot of things you can do via that. But I often talk about with people when they're trying to decide what way to go with their career, or when they're chasing something of as an entrepreneur, about, okay, well, what do you really own here? Like, what is yours, and what do you have control of? And when it comes to things like DEI hires or company policy or your belief systems and how they align or don't align with things like that, you can put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into something, and really realize at the end of the day, what do I actually own here? Like, what have I built? And it's something that I think anybody should really dig into before they get too far into any career choice.
Yeah, it really is. And it's one of those things where you are an asset to the company right up until the moment you're not, right?
Yeah.
So you're a number on the scorecard. And I was an asset to the company right up until the moment I got sued. And then I crossed over to the liability because they didn't want the bad press. They didn't want the potential public backlash. And, uh, and so I crossed that line. But people can cross that line even as they're an asset. Like, say they're a high earner in the company, and all of a sudden the company goes under financial stress, and now they got to cut the highest earners because the owners have to save the company as a whole versus just that one person that's the highest earner.
Yeah, I've had this conversation too about public versus private companies, as well as, like, at the end of the day, with publicly held companies, you have to understand, whether you're an employee or a customer or whatever, that the public company is beholden to the shareholder. And at the end of the day, it is their mandate to make the shareholder as much money as possible. And they may and are likely to sacrifice values or missions or anything that they have foundationally as an organization to serve the shareholder, because that is the structure of the business, right?
Yep.
And so when you work for a business that's privately held and you know the ownership or the board of directors or whatever, they don't have to choose that as the thing that drives their decision making skills. They may choose the bottom dollar, but in our organizations, we really make it clear that the bottom dollar is not, like, it has to be considered, but it is not the reason why we make decisions or how we treat people or even how we do business, right? And I consider in our business, like my dad and I are partners on everything that we do, but is that we're stewards of the business and that it's all ultimately God's business. And our decisions are based on how we can best serve his purpose and his business through the business, right?
Yeah,
And so
and that's why it's
there's
so
a lot of
important.
difference, and I don't think a lot of people think that deeply about the difference of the company they work for, or what they're building and how they're building it, and that type of control fundamentally of the business.
That's why it's so important on two aspects. One, to get to know the leaders that you're representing and working with those people that you align with and that know will have your back. Like I just had a good friend 3 years ago sell to a private equity firm his exteriors business. And he had three offers. He chose the lowest offer because that private equity firm promised to take care of his people.
Yeah,
And they have to this point. But that's the difference. Like he could have made millions more, millions by going with the
yeah.
highest offer. He chose the lowest offer because they were so concerned and made him aware that they were going to take care of his people.
Yeah, that's I've done a couple of previous podcasts and interviews on doing acquisitions, because it's something we've been doing the last few years. I think we've done 4 acquisitions of other companies now, and it's extremely intriguing when you get to know the owners of the business that you're vetting or looking at acquiring, because often the key factor isn't money at all. It's actually that, and that's the acquisitions that we've done that have been the best ones, have been totally tied to the fact that the owner actually wants someone who's going to be a good steward of their business for the future of the business, as well as their customers, as well as their employees, and all of that. And if you can show that you can deliver that and that you actually care about that, that the deal, like, you can get a great financial deal on that business because you're willing to do that work, and that's what actually matters to the owners.
Yeah, I forgot the other side of that. I totally agree with what you're saying. But the other side was, as the owner, um, you need to be building a brand socially, like social media brand, because
Yeah.
this will help you get the right people that are aligned with you. And we just had our RTA call last night. I don't know if you were on it, but it was a great one because they Andy and Ed were talking about how many of us mistake building a business and a social or a personal brand as
Personal
two
brand.
separate things. Yeah, as two separate things instead of one and the same. And you, as the owner, as you build that personal brand, you're authentic, you're vulnerable, like you are you, and you're putting that out there. You're going to attract like minds into your business that are going to help propel you.
Yeah, it was interesting because we're a values-based organization using US model to come up with those values and mission statements and visions and things. But I hadn't, as well as I'm building a personal brand through this podcast, through Instagram and Facebook, and just putting yourself out there genuinely, as you are the same way. But I had a meeting with a very large corporation, and just he was just a member of that corporation, about a significant amount of business that we're going to be doing with them. And he pushed his card across the table, and on the back of his card, he flipped it over, and it had the corporation's values on the back of the card. And in our office here out in the middle, we have our values up on the walls, kind of around the office, in just in a nice way, but it states our 7 company values. And he said, when I walked in here, I see that you guys have your values up on the walls. And I can see by talking, communicating with you up to this point in the little business that we have done, that you are a values driven business. And we are also a values driven business. And I can see that our businesses will align with each other, and that this is going to be a great relationship because of that. And that was one of the first times that ever someone had actually, like, pointed out that they would want to do business with us because of our values. But you put years and years of work into that, and often you don't get that kind of feedback to really describe how important it is, that people that are going to buy from you or do business from you really do care about the values that you care about,
Hmm.
and they're looking for that kind of alignment, and they want to have values, cohesiveness with people that they do business with.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I study it and I teach it so much, like I can walk into a business and feel if they have aligned values. Like us going to First Form, like we know walking in
Yeah,
there, even if we didn't know Andy, we could feel it. I have a company that's right next to me called Vortex Optics, and they become one of the largest optics companies in the world.
yeah.
Very similar to First Form. I can walk in there and feel their values. I don't need to see if they're on the wall. I don't need to see if they're on their website. I can feel them when I walk in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the comments when we do tours of our building and whatnot out of our facilities here. People make these comments and just like, man, I don't like whatever you guys are doing here. I don't understand, but I've never seen so many people smiling and happy and just getting along and enjoying their work as I have in this place. And it's like it just
That's
speaks
awesome.
to the effort of the culture and the time that's been put in there. Moving ahead again. Interestingly, you talk about 75 hard in the book, and the impact it had on you. I'm mid 30s. I don't know what day I'm on right now, but I'm in the middle of 75 hard. This will be assuming I complete this will be my third one, in about 4 years. But I think it's a transformational thing, and I know it's changed my life. But knowing that you've been through it as well, I just want to get your take on doing 75 hard and how it changed you when you did it for the first time.
Yeah, most people I think will say that it completely changed their life. For me, what it did was help me remember who the fuck I am.
Yeah,
Because I did it the first time I did it was right after, termination. Finally, after 6 months, negotiate that exit, and I had built the vision of what I was going to do next, but my mind was still in the gutter, and I needed to
yeah,
get it back. So I chose to do 75 hard. It was everything that it was cracked up to be. It did everything that it was supposed to do to get my mind back, and then some. Um, those days that I wrote about, I mean, some of those hard, like even in the beginning, like these stairs that are right next to me are wood, and I started in the winter here in Wisconsin, so it's slippery and like messed up my shin and foot going up the stairs just for a simple slip. I think that was like on day one, or it was the first week for sure.
that's
And
great.
like it was like the world or God saying, like, "You sure you're going to do this?" And then there's multiple sicknesses and other injuries that I had along the way, and then a really bad day of travel that tried to screw things up. And like you just realize if you're really mentally set on doing this and completing, like I went into it with like nothing's going to stop me. I'm not trying this. I'm doing this. Like the transformation that you have is incredible. Like I got to day 40 and had this epiphany. I was like, I'm 41 years old. uh, when's have I ever gone 40 days straight without a drop of alcohol? Because I had done sober October or dry January before. Those are only
Yep.
31 days. And the answer that I came to was since I was 17 years old, I've never gone 40 days without a drop of alcohol. Like, how sad is that?
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
I never had a problem with alcohol. I just, it was typically a habit for my wife to have a glass of wine at dinner, and I'd have a glass of bourbon. And it was just kind of habit. And so on day 40, as I'm thinking about this, I was like, my mind is so clear. Like you remove the
Yeah.
sugars, you remove the processed foods, you remove the alcohol, and you're like, oh, this is how God intended for our minds to be. And so now, since then, I seriously contemplated giving up alcohol entirely, but now I just save it for a very special occasion with special people and not neglecting. And I still only like I'm never drunk, but a couple times a year I'll have a bourbon, and it's so much better just giving that up because growing up in Wisconsin, I know Canada's big beer drinkers as well. Wisconsin,
Yep.
like everyone finds an excuse for anything to drink, especially in the winter months.
Yeah, it seems, whether you call it Alberta or Canada or Wisconsin or America or whatever, but it seems like it's gotten worse through COVID as well. That just people like kind of hole up and alcohol sales. I can't remember the statistic. It was insane though. Like they were 50% higher during and post COVID or something like that. But like, yeah, it's the common pastime. People go and they drink together. They go to the bar. Everyone's got an alcohol cabinet in their house, and it's shocking to me. Not because I'm not that guy or I haven't done it. I like a glass of Canadian whiskey or bourbon from Kentucky as much as the next guy. But it's that slippery slope, and we lose sight of, like you said, who the fuck we're supposed to be, and what it feels like to be that person. And again, being in the middle of 75 hard right now, I'm in that realization yet again for the third or fourth time, of what it really feels like to be fully clear and fully hydrated and fully tuned in, right? Like I read an article once that basically they called it the Italian tune up. So if you once a day go and push yourself to like 100, 110%, you get your circulatory system going, you get your nervous system going. You basically put your entire body on high alert, and you clear out everything and it's all cleaned out and everything's pumping and warm and rolling properly. And then you go out on your day after doing that, the impact and the intensity that you can have and the energy that you can have is just it's otherworldly. But this is how every day is supposed to be, how God created us to be. And yet
Yeah.
we all live in this kind of humdrum, sludgy, dragging our knuckles, kind of like tired dystopian reality, and don't think anything of it because that's normal.
Yeah, it's leading a you're like Andy calls it a floater, the floater in the toilet. And that's how a lot of people go through life, is just floating and not actually purposefully living into it. And that's where they get to the end of their life with a lot of regret, because they know they could have
Yeah.
gone harder. They know they could have been more intentional. They know they could have done something amazing that would have left a mark on this world, and they choose not to do it. Like Dr. Les Brown put it so well. I don't know if it's his original quote, but he's the first person I heard it. He said, "The richest place on the earth is the graveyard. It's where everyone's dreams, hopes, inventions went to die because they never had the courage to act, or they just went through life drinking and floating and not actually acting on that dream, that idea, that invention, whatever it may be."
Yeah. Well, and I think you get this kind of it's almost like a beta complex. Is like we're just happy enough that it's not worth trying harder to get what we want, right? And then eventually we begin to believe that, that we don't want it or we don't need it or there isn't anything better to chase after. And we lose sight of that we can bring things into reality that our dreams are, and then we can reach those things and they're not as far away as we believe them to be. And I felt for me, 75 hard really, really sharpens that understanding. Is just like, man, when I go hard for 75 days in a row, the amount of momentum and progress that I make is absolutely flipping insane. It's just insane when you get to the end and you're just like, it's only 75 days ago. This is the reality, and this is where I am now, 2.5 months later. It's like compressing a year's worth of effort into 2.5 months and then seeing the fruit of that on the other side so quickly. Like it's like
Yeah.
watching your gas gauge go down on your vehicle in real time if you could drive that far. It's like, but you're seeing the gauge go up at that pace.
Yep, that's right. That's a great
Yeah.
analogy.
Such a powerful thing, something I love to try to point out to people, but they don't call it 75 hard because it's easy either. Like it's not life changing because you just choose one day to do it and you roll out of bed and it happens. Like it takes another gear and another level of yourself that you haven't yet experienced or met.
That's right.
So good. Something that I like, that you talk about in the book, and something I talk about often with people, is the concept of building integrity with yourself. I'd love if you just kind of give me some perspective on that, and how you built integrity with yourself and what difference it makes.
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier. Or no, let me replace that word. It's a lot simpler than people think. So many
Yeah.
people struggle with self-confidence and self-worth, whether they had a bad or a troubled upbringing, whatever it may be. um, and they haven't figured out how to flex their own muscles, literally or proverbially. And so here's the simple solution: keep your word to yourself.
Yep.
Every time you keep your word to yourself, you start building the case that you are who you say you are. You start building your self confidence, your self worth. Every time you don't keep your word to yourself, you erode your self confidence and your self worth. So the answer is you. It's not outside getting affirmation from your parents. It's not outside affirmation getting from mentors, coaches, or friends. It's you. It's self confidence. It's self worth. It's not called outside worth or outside confidence. It's self. So the answer is you. And that's why I changed the word from easy to simple, because they are two different definitions. And
Mm-hmm.
so that integrity that you want to portray, like, it's interesting. We're in this social media driven world and we see everyone else's highlight reels and we wonder why we're not doing that. Well, they're not
Yeah.
living a perfect life either. They're
Mm.
just showing you what they want you to see. And so to think that that's their actuality is just a false narrative to begin with. What you got to do, I don't care if it's you say you're going to brush your teeth 3 times a day, then brush your teeth 3 times a day. Because if you don't, even that little task is telling yourself that you are not who you say you are. And so I use that silly example of brushing your teeth because it's as small as that can erode your self confidence, and as big as hitting a goal. And the more and more you build a case for yourself that you, when you set out to do something, that you do it, just like 75 hard, just like we were talking about that. We're not trying it, we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, you build that case for yourself for self confidence, self worth, which leads to you being an integral person.
Yeah, I don't know if we could belabor how important this is for becoming who you need to be or who you want to be. Building integrity yourself first. It does come back a little bit to your bridges as well of the spiritual and the internal bridges being the first two, right? Like you have to have integrity and be honest with God and yourself and build up that relationship genuinely, and then you have to really like live with yourself and learn to believe in yourself and be honest with yourself because integrity with yourself also is very tied to self-talk and how you talk to yourself and the questions you ask yourself and the expectations that you make for yourself, and trust is earned with yourself, right? Is like when you break trust. It was actually something was said better to me about trust the other day, and I really appreciated a friend of mine named Kelly said this. He said, "Oh, trust isn't actually earned. Mistrust is earned. We can give
Mm,
trust, but when we break someone's trust, we earn their mistrust, right?" And I thought that was such a great distinction. Just sorry on the topic of trust, because the difference between living a really enjoyable life in relationship is actually being able to give trust to people instead of making people earn it. But then when they do break trust, that they're actually earning that mistrust rather than you not giving them trust to begin with.
that's really good.
It fundamentally changed the way I thought about it. And we were talking about parenting and kids and kids maybe potentially lying to their parents, which is very uncommon. Um, but the fact that we give our kids trust, but they can earn our mistrust. Going back to the integrity thing, I read a study a while back, and I wish I could quote it better than I'm going to, but basically, what they proved is scientifically when we don't follow through and have integrity with ourselves. So if you say we're going to do something or we have a fundamental belief about ourselves, but our actions don't align with it, that it actually creates physical brain damage in our brain. And it rots and erodes the protein structures of our brain in that our beliefs and our realities are not in alignment, and it literally makes us like stupider and have like mental illness gets built off of that. And
Yeah,
I thought
I
that
can
was
believe it.
incredibly intriguing because the word integrity, like, there's the moral kind of a definition of integrity of just like when nobody's looking, I do this, right? That kind of integrity. But you can also use the word integrity in like a more material sense, is like the integrity of a piece of steel or the integrity of a building or the structural integrity. Well, I think that there's actually like a scientific, spiritual, physical tie between that word that makes it so much more deeper, is that when we don't have integrity, it actually breaks us down physically, and our integrity physically suffers because we are not having moral integrity. And
Yeah,
I just thought
that's
that
really,
was wild scientifically, that that's a reality, that us not having integrity with ourselves or being honest and genuine results in a physical breakdown.
yeah, if you can find that study, send it to me because it makes so much sense, right? Because we know that worry and stress actually takes years off our life.
Hmm.
And most of that is undue. Most of our worry and anxiety were actually not living in the present, not living with gratitude, but rather worrying about the future or stuff we can't control. So I know that to be true through fMRIs and stuff of that nature. I'd be fascinated to see that study.
Yeah, and it was tied to like neuroplasticity and brain structure and function. And so I'll try and see if I can dig it up. It was a while ago now, but I was just like, when I read that, I
Yeah.
was just like, that's wild.
Well, if there's
Um,
one area of science I geek out in, it's neuroscience. So that's why it
Oh yeah,
intrigues me as well.
neuroplasticity and the work they're doing with that now, and the ties to like spirituality and leadership and the decisions you make. It's so next level, and I love reading about it because it really, like, it ties the whole concept of the renewing of our minds and a lot of the things that are said biblically that can be proven now in the world of science. It's just so freaking spectacular. Um, Going off of that, so yeah, again, the integrity with yourself is huge, and 75 hard, and one of the beauties, not to belabor that, is that 75 hard is a process of building integrity with yourself for 75 days, because you said, I'm going to do this. It's very cut and dry. There's no subjectivity to it. This is what I do. This is how I do it. I get up, I check off the checklist, and I do it. And so every day that we do that, and it doesn't have to be 75 hard, it can be anything. But we build the strength of integrity with ourselves, which builds that momentum of being able to dream bigger. Because when I can get the little things all in alignment with that integrity with myself, then the big things become way more possible in our
That's
view
right.
and in our scope. I just think that it's a key thing, and that's why I said it's maybe one of the most important things for people trying to start their personal growth journey is if you can start out by building that strong integrity with yourself through your internal bridge, like you're talking about in your book and in your process. Uh, it is the stepping stones to going to where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, I could never do that." I'm like, what do you mean? Like you literally, you want to be a better person, you want to live a better life, do you want to hit these goals? Like, how could you look at that and say, "Oh, I couldn't give up the alcohol"? Or so you're letting alcohol control your life? Or I couldn't do 2 workouts a day. Like you're letting time run you instead of you run time. Like
Well, and I
you
think
look at
people
each
say it
factor.
flippantly too, right? It's not even that they believe it or don't believe it. They just let it out of their mouth. And I'm a huge believer, like, not necessarily in the whole concept of manifesting, like slightly, but more so in the reality of when we say things out loud, we're bringing them into reality, whether we mean to or not, which is essentially manifesting. But
Yep.
when we just flippantly say these things, whether we mean them or not, we're bringing that in and we're planting it in our subconscious mind, and you're hurting yourself without really appreciating what you're doing.
Yep. Your present and your future self.
Absolutely. Cool. So one of the last things I'll ask you, Josh, and it's something that I try to ask everybody that I interview is, um, in your leadership, who were or what were some scenarios of people who were mentoring and leading in your life that made a lot of difference and that helped you understand the importance of leadership, that you were a leader, and that helped you kind of define what leadership really means?
Yeah, so my father was a big one, even though I didn't want to, admit it going into his firm, being his oldest son and um, stubborn type A personality that was very similar to him. But he was a great leader and still is to this day. He led very differently than me, but showed me what a great leader is. Um, and then I had a coach, John Wright, who I referenced in the book, who was actually my dad's mentor. And as I was trying to not listen to my dad, I chose him as my coach so that I could listen to someone that I deeply respected, that helped develop who my father is today. So those were two great choices. But I also want to give one bad choice. And it wasn't a choice that I had. It was my senior year football coach. Um, he was the worst leader, worst coach I ever had. Completely demeaning. No one could do anything right. And the reason I bring this example up is because you can learn from bad leaders too. So
Hmm.
there's a couple different examples that I learned from him. One is I never wanted to be like him. Like I vividly remember uh, I was a wide receiver and a very good one. And I shoved the corner on a blocking assignment into our own bench. And as I'm running back on the field, he says, Kosnick, it's about time you made a fucking block. My running back's running for a touchdown, mind you. And I'd been blocking my ass off all year. And
Hmm.
that's the feedback that I got instead of encouraging or good job or way to drive that block, whatever. And then there was another example which actually taught me a very valuable lesson from this bad coach. We were in film study. I had a great week, a great Friday game. I had like 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 catches, and I'm a young 17-year-old, and we're watching tape the next week, and I'm kind of jostling my guys next to me as we're watching this, and I had a good catch and whatever. And he pauses the tape and he goes, Kosnick, no one reads yesterday's fucking newspaper. Got it. I shut up. But that lesson has always stuck with me because it's not about our past successes. We're on to the next week. We got to focus on the next game. The purpose of us watching that tape was to figure out what we needed to get better at, not what we did well. And so I give that example because no matter where you're at, if you have a great leader or a bad leader, there's something that can be learned.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so good. I think that yeah, that mindset is great, and it's good for people to think about that too, in the sense of sports, but also in the sense of where you work and the leader that you're working under. The concepts of one leading up, but two just looking for the things that you can learn from people, good and bad, right? Like there's two sides to every coin in that respect, and seeing that and adjusting accordingly is up to us, right? We're not victims of other people's leadership or situations or not. We can choose to utilize it for good ultimately.
Yeah, because even if you grew up with a bad father, let's say you're a son, you grew up with a bad father, he was abusive, he never told you I loved you, all those different things, um, then you have a choice to either be like that man or change you and like literally change your family's trajectory by being the opposite of that man. And it's your choice. And we've seen both ways go. Well, why do I act like that? Well, my father treated me like that, so I treat my son like that. No, you have the chance to make a choice to break a generational curse.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being like the man you were raised and that you didn't even respect or like, why don't you be the opposite?
100%. It's great. I'm going to finish on one last thing here because it's one of the things I chuckled and laughed out loud at this in the book, and I just thought it was absolutely spectacular. Never heard it before, which I can't even believe. But can you tell me about the 7 lessons from geese?
Yeah. I don't even know if I could remember them off the top of my
I
head
can read.
because,
I'm going to read them because I was there. I started. I was reading your book, and I'm pretty sure I was laughing out my loud. And my wife is like, "What are you reading right now?" And I'm just like, "I've never heard this, but it's flipping hilarious." And in Canada, we have like I'm sure you guys see them too, but the Canadian geese,
yep.
which is kind of what you were referencing, and they're flipping everywhere here, and they're so annoying to me anyways and most people, and so it's like lessons from geese, like what could I possibly learn from those idiots? But
Leadership
here we
lessons
go.
from geese. There was an article done. Yeah.
So, lesson number one: geese fly together, they share a common goal. And so I think your referencing of this is from a group of guys that you were with and kind of a mastermind and mentoring group that you guys kind of were peers and helping each other out. And so
Yeah.
this
And we
was
still
kind of
are.
the ethos of that. Yeah.
Yep.
But I thought they were super good. Geese stay in formation, therefore increasing efficiency by 71%. Geese rotate roles, they encourage the leader and empower others to lead. Geese are noisy, they recognize and support each other. Geese don't leave another goose behind. If one falls out of formation due to injuries or illness, one or two others will stay behind until the goose is healed or deceased. 6. Geese maintain priorities. They stay committed to the team, their core values, and purpose. And 7. Geese are disruptive. They change the status.
They changed the status of a golf course, your yard, everything.
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad you reread those because I would have remembered probably half of them. But yeah, the
Yeah.
reference came from this group I joined, I think 15 years ago now, and it's we were all in the financial industry in a similar leadership position or role, and someone brought this article up and said, and we were drinking some Grey Goose vodka at the time as well, I think, so had a little bit to do with it. And I'm like, why? And they brought up, hey, we'll name our group the Grey Geese. And I was like, why not something more badass like lions or I don't know, something grizzly bears or something.
You're obviously not trying to attract people with your marketing scheme there.
Yeah, yeah. And so then he busted out these seven leadership lessons from geese. And I was like, all right, I can get behind that. Those are very wise. And so our group name, and when now I literally have golf head covers, I have a cutting board that we handmade. Well, I have a bunch of other trinkets with gray geese on it. We got one of them that got married. We got him some cornhole boards with the gray geese logo on it and a V formation. Um, and it's been kind of our mantra, and we reread those every time we get together, and remember our purpose as to why we're together to help each other get better and grow as men of God, as husbands, as fathers, and as business people.
Yeah, it's super good, and I agree. Whether it be coaching or mentoring or any scenario, Arte is another example of that, where you get around like-minded people that are really committed to helping one another become the best they can be, and they're willing to make sacrifices for the good of the group. And yeah, I thought it was really quite funny and a powerful metaphor there as well. So I just want to say thanks, Josh. Appreciate you taking the time. It was great reading your book. I've given it and mentioned it to lots of friends already. It's a really powerful thing, and I highly recommend any of our listeners that you go out and search out the Kairos Code and search out Josh. Where can we find you, Josh, if we're looking to connect?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy. I haven't met another Josh Kosnick on the planet, so my SEO is really good. But I'm at Josh Kosnick on all social media platforms, and then joshkosnick.com for a website. And yeah, feel free to reach out, ask any questions, or just drop what takeaways you had from Jory and I's conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again, and thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you hanging in there with the Built to Lead podcast. And if this podcast was helpful to you, and you felt like you got value out of it, I really appreciate it if you guys would like, share, comment, do all the social media type things, because we're here to help, and the only way we get to expand and grow the podcast is if you join with us in sharing it and spreading the good word. So have an awesome week, and thanks again, Josh.
Yeah, very welcome.